The fourth edict already burns for your world. Your affliction upon her will soon be erased.
Ready to hunt.
What's up, guys? Today, I want to share a build I've been playing since the start of this league. After about a week of development, I'm finally happy to say that it actually works. Not only does it work extremely well. It has enough damage for bosses, clears maps at lightning speed, almost never dies, and, most importantly, it's cheap and incredibly fun to play. I'm not sure if anyone has made a video on something like this yet, at least not this league. But even if someone has, I don't give a fuck. Anyway, let's get started. The core skill of this build is Spark, unlike the typical Lightning Warp Execute build that focuses on increasing the execute threshold. Our damage actually comes from Spark itself. Active skills we have Spark, Ball Lightning, Lightning Warp, and for the trigger skills, Spell Slinger, Cast on Critical, Cast on Elemental Ailment, Elemental Invocation. Version 0.5 introduced a very important change that finally made this setup work properly, fixed a bug where Lightning Warp was prioritizing selected targets instead of cullable enemies or ball lightning projectiles. Before this change, whenever ball lightning passed through enemies, Lightning Warp would frequently target enemies that hadn't reached execute range instead of targeting the ball lightning projectile itself. And that was terrible. So how does the build actually function? The basic sequence looks like this. Cast Spark. Spellslinger gains energy. Spellslinger casts Ball Lightning. Lightning Warp teleports to Ball Lightning. Gain Cold Infusion. Cast Empowered Spark. That's the manual part. But how do we turn this into something that teleports all over the screen like Flicker Strike? Simple. Put Lightning Warp into Cast on Critical, while Spark is filling the entire screen with hits. Cast on Critical will automatically prioritize nearby low-life enemies and cast Lightning Warp on them. You teleport to the target, execute it, and continue chaining through packs. Since Spark deals a very high number of hits, enemies constantly get pushed into execute range. The result is exactly what you're seeing. You're flying all over the map, non-stop. Cast on Critical's targeting range is also absurdly large. I don't know the exact distance, but jumping across two screens happens regularly, which conveniently matches Spark's effective range. If there aren't any executable enemies available, Cast on Critical will instead target the ball lightning generated by Spellslinger. That means the setup still functions during boss fights and never goes to waste. So the actual mapping loop becomes Cast Spark, Spellslinger casts Ball Lightning, Cast on Critical teleports to either Ball Lightning or a low-life enemy. Gain Cold Infusion. Cast Empowered Spark in practice. Most of the time you're just holding down Spark, mashing buttons and watching everything on the screen disappear. That's the gameplay theory. But how do we make sure the build actually deals real damage instead of looking flashy? First, let's talk about Spark itself. Although Spark is a lightning spell, its true potential only appears after gaining Cold Infusion. An infused Spark becomes a hybrid lightning and cold damage skill, while also gaining additional cast time and extra projectiles. One important detail after receiving Cold Infusion, Empowered Spark gains an additional 0.5 seconds of base cast time. Normally that would be a huge damage loss. However, if Spark is placed inside a meta skill, regular Spark costs 70% energy, and Empowered Spark still only costs 70% energy. The energy requirement does not increase to 120 despite the longer cast time. This makes Spark an exceptional trigger spell, arguably even better than Comet. The next question is, how do we generate enough Cold Infusion? This is where Lightning Warp comes in. The key passive elemental equilibrium, the lightning infusion gained from Lightning Warp is converted into Cold Infusion. As long as you're constantly teleporting, you'll continuously generate Cold Infusion, allowing both your manually cast and triggered sparks to become empowered sparks. If that's still not enough, add Verisium Infusion for even more infusion generation. If I could completely solve the infusion problem, I would run Spark in both meta setups. Right now I can't, so one of them remains Comet. That said, Comet is still an excellent choice. The rest of the damage scaling follows the standard caster package that every spell build uses, so I won't go into detail. One thing worth mentioning is that we rely heavily on elemental invocation and cast on elemental ailment. Because of that, elemental Archon scaling becomes extremely valuable. I highly recommend obtaining an amulet that's worth enough to add the hidden passive dominion as early as possible. Now let's talk about defense. When you're flying into the pack, how are you going to stop those mean Mother Hubbard from tearing you a structurally superfluous behind? The answer, use Refutation. Yes, I know some of you are already thinking, that got nerfed. It's dead. It doesn't work anymore. No, it wasn't killed. It was adjusted to a reasonable level. Its original version was so strong that it completely broke the game. After the rework, it finally feels like an actual game mechanic rather than an exploit. The exact mechanics are complicated, but a simplified explanation is, while Refutation is active, your stun threshold is effectively equal to your effective life pool. Our goal is to invest as little as possible into defense while getting the highest survivability possible. To accomplish that, we want Runic Ward, Armor and Evasion, Life and Stun Threshold, Skill Effect Duration, Cooldown Recovery. By using high rune base helmets and boots, then applying Rune Forging, it's fairly easy to reach around 600 Runic Ward. That's already enough to support Refutation. Any remaining capacity can be used for additional infusion generation through Verisium. Armor and Evasion come from the body armor. Pure Evasion can work, but physical damage generates a lot of stun buildup. Armor significantly reduces that problem. For skill effect duration and cooldown recovery, we use the weapon swap setup, relevant passive nodes, and a unique shield. Once everything is assembled, duration, roughly 15 seconds, cooldown, roughly 4 seconds, there are still weaknesses, but the investment to power ratio is incredible. During uptime, my character's effective health pool increases by roughly 4 to 5 times. It's enough to ignore normal monsters and comfortably tank many dangerous enemies head-on. For Ascendancy, I chose Invoker. It's an extremely cost-effective option. Every single Ascendancy node contributes directly to the build, and it provides a massive amount of spirit for very little investment. If budget isn't a concern, I would instead recommend Gemling or Infernalist. For the passive tree, you'll need to solve mana issues. Pick up every critical strike chance node you can reasonably reach. Invest in a few key defensive clusters. Grab the meta skill nodes. Take the Dominion-related passives and acquire projectile speed wherever possible. For gear, the budget-friendly options are Maligaro's Virtuosity, Threaded Light. Both uniques can comfortably carry you through the entire game. The currency you save should be invested into Wand, Body Armor, Amulet. These 3 slots provide the largest power increase. Since we're basically flying through the air most of the time, movement speed on boots isn't particularly important. Feel free to buy boots with strong stats instead of paying extra for movement speed. My own gear is still far from perfect, yet I'm already able to clear all endgame bosses and farm high-tier maps efficiently. With upgrades such as Mage Blood, Rakiata's Flow, and other premium items, the build would feel even smoother. That's all for today's build showcase. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. Stay sane, exile.